am Anne LaFollette, and I am a surface pattern designer and online business coach. And I thought I would do something a little different in this week's broadcast. I would love to share with you this week an actual tutorial for a design that I did this past week that is in ink and watercolor. And why don't we jump right in? I'm going to walk you through my step-by-step process for creating what you see right now. This is the final product that we're going to work on together, and I'm going to walk you through it step by step. So let's jump right in. The first thing I'd like to explain as you watch me get started here is my supplies. I do not use any fancy supplies at all. The sketchbook that I am using is a Canson mixed media sketchbook. It is 7 by 10 inches, and I'll put a link to it in the description below this video. You'll also notice that my paintbrush has a bunch of tape around it. I purchased a set of really inexpensive Princeton Select round brushes, and the one that I'm using in this video is the number 6. And I don't actually know why this happened, but they're blue. They have actually a blue handle, and the blue on my handle started to disintegrate and would leave little shards of blue on sort of all over my table. And so I just taped it up with the tape that you see. And so as I mentioned, I am not using any fancy supplies whatsoever. I do have nice watercolors, however. I have a set of, I think it's 15 Koi, K-O-I watercolors, and I will put a link in the description for you as well. And I'm primarily in this particular piece using the yellow, deep yellow, the yellow ochre, the sienna, and then I think I use a couple of additional colors as we go through, because I know I use some greens. I think I use a combination of the deep green as well as the yellow green, and that those are the majority of the colors that I use. And I do a little bit of color mixing, but you know, I keep it pretty simple. So one of the things you noticed right away is that I didn't sketch at all on my notebook before, or my sketchbook before I just jumped right in. I had sort of an idea in mind in terms of these loose flowers that I wanted to sort of surround with some really pretty greenery, but I didn't actually do any practicing beforehand. One of the things that I have found in my own sort of coloring practice or my painting practice is that the more I just jump in, the looser I can sort of allow myself to be. And I highly recommend that you give this a try where you don't, where you just experiment, right? Just experiment. And so what I did is I started in the very center of my page, and I know that probably more advanced artists than me may very well not want to put something that's quite so centered. It's slightly off the center, as you can see. And then I wanted to do a different flower that was not, the one that's sort of in the center is from top down view. And then you can notice that the one that's over slightly to the left is more of a side view of the same type of flower. And these are, you know, imaginary flowers. Then what I wanted to do was to add some greenery and to have a little bit of movement happening in the piece, which is the green, sort of the green leaves, and I did a couple of different shapes of green leaves, and then there's one towards the bottom that are those three bits that sort of look almost like teardrops. I used a lot more water content in order to get those to be quite a bit lighter. And then now I'm just adding a little sprig and a couple of additional details. You notice that I did use sort of a combination of, I think it's the carmine that I also added some of the sienna to tone it down a little bit for the little dots. And right now I am primarily just trying to make sure that there's balance in the piece and that it flows nicely, that there is some movement to it, and I am pretty much done at this stage. I'm just sort of zooming out for a second to take a look at it to say, okay, well, wait a minute, might there be the need for something that in this sort of lower left-hand corner, which is what you're seeing me add there, and that's a combination of a lemon yellow and deep yellow rather, again with a little bit of the ochre in it. And now I am just taking my pen and I'm playing with these new pens that I totally love, and I will put them in the description as well. It's a black liner permanent set of pens that are by a brand called, I don't know if you can see it in that corner there, but they're called Molotow or Molotow. It's got a W at the end. And I am just using 2 different nib sizes. I'm using a 02 and the 05 to add additional detail to my watercolor. I did let it dry. I let it dry, I think, for a good half an hour to 45 minutes. I went and just did something completely different so that I wouldn't just be watching it dry. You know, when you are in a hurry to get your watercolor to dry and you watch it, it's kind of like watching a pot boil. It takes forever. So I walked away, I did something else, and then I came back to it when I knew it was totally dry. And I'm using primarily the I believe it's now the 05 nib size, and I'm just adding some additional details in ink. I really love the combination of watercolor and ink, and I've been playing around with it quite a bit, which is why I wanted to record this tutorial for you this week. And I hope that you enjoy watching it and also are going to give it a try yourself. I find that when I'm adding these details, I don't necessarily want to add too many of them, and so there is definitely a point in time where you want to either slow down, or what I do is before I actually start inking at all, I think a little bit about, well, how much ink am I going to want to add to this, and how much am I just going to want to leave the watercolor alone? And then I slowly make my way around the piece to decide, well, where do I actually want to add some additional lines so that when your eye looks at the combination of the watercolor and the ink, it can actually see more of more form or more shape. And where do I want to potentially just add a little bit more sort of punch. On some of the leaves, I definitely wanted to get that sort of black, more of that black that you see, in order for there to be a little bit more contrast in the design itself. And then here's again what the final piece looked like. I always like to say in closing that I am Anne Follett, and it's never too late to create. If you enjoy these tutorials and these broadcasts, please hit the subscribe button and also click on that little bell so that you're notified every time I have a new video. I hope to see you again next week, and bye for now.